And so, where is the impulse in us that actually has a shift our lived experience from just cycling around in fear and cycling around in the collective consciousness, just feeling like, well, this is the way it is, this is what everyone does, this is the way life is. What is it that shifts us? What is it that is compelling enough to truly call us to shift our way of being from just spinning in the hamster wheel to actually shifting the core frequency of our lived experience? Because the world and the projected world is constantly trying to sell us separation. And we're creating that out of our core frequency impulse of fear. And if we're holding that core frequency impulse of fear, we're held in a belief, this is just the way that it is. And I'll keep trying and I'll keep pushing and I'll keep trying to fix and I'll keep feeling a little bit excited when I think that I'm onto something and I'm going to fix something and I think I found a new way. And then I'll be disappointed that it didn't actually work and it wasn't actually the way. It's so compelling to just keep going. It's so compelling and exciting when a new possibility to fix me comes up. Oh, and we can have a conversation about it. Something new, something new to try. A new way of fixing me, a new way of fixing the human experience. It's so compelling. So what is it? What is needed to make that shift where we actually stop trusting fear, where we actually stop investing in fear, and we actually start bringing our focus to love? I'm not going to tell you the answer right now, because that's part of the fun, right, of this unfolding, is finding out what it is. What will it take? An answer doesn't bring your heart alive. It becomes more information that you then continue to digest that information. Oh, I just got a new piece of information, and now I'll just carry on trying to fix and change my life. What we're speaking of is coming to realize, what is that impulse within? What is that longing? What is compelling enough to bring us out of the absolute dreary dream of separation and continuing to run around like a little hamster in its wheel, doing the same thing and being compelled to try to fix the me? What is it that shifts this game of life? Let this land in the heart as an inquiry, as a contemplation. Can you feel a fire inside you that longs for, and you can fill in the blank, right? Whether it's truth, freedom, reality, God, Divine Mother, love, eternity, infinite blissful being, whatever it is, Can you feel a fire of longing inside? Can you feel the impulse? Whether it feels like subtle curiosity or whether it feels like a blazing fire that says, take me there now, great glory. Take me to truth. Take me into you, right? But even then, that you think you have that fire inside, but yet still a compulsion to keep trying to fix and being compelled by another possibility, right? It's so slippery. It's so slippery how compelling it is to fix and change and be compelled by something that's going to fix me, right? And so really, it's to notice this longing of the heart, because that which is longing already knows that there's something greater than what is being lived. Because the truth is that we already are the full wholeness. We already are the glory, the divine, the peace. Everything that we are longing for, we already are. And then such a huge part of this unfolding is that nobody can give it to us. We can't get it outside in the play of the world. We cannot bully our way to it. We cannot pay for it, no matter how much resources we have for that. We cannot effort our way to it in the ways that the intellect thinks that we can. We cannot get it in the ways that we want to get it, because that would defeat the whole purpose of what this unfolding is about. The glory of this unfolding is that the whole appearance of the life is so that we can see our distortions, right? That's really important. The whole appearance of this life is so that we can see our discordance and our distortions of consciousness in plain view. Not to go into the unconscious guilt complex and the shame that says, there's something wrong with me. Oh, I'm doing something wrong. Why is this happening? But so that we can recognize that all life is grace and it's offering us the most incredible possibility to see where we are hooked and to not move to create further projections into the shame and guilt, but to pull back the projections that we have created. Yes, we have created. Pull back the projections and dissolve them in the innermost being, in the innermost knowing of what we are in truth. So it's as if the mind projects from the limited consciousness, the belief in the me, the belief in everything that we think we are after the I am in its purity, right? Everything that we think we are, I am this, I am that, I am, right? Again, fill in the blanks with all of the marvelous things that I am thinks that it is, and realize that the whole play of life is to come to the I am presence that is empty and pure, and use the power of awareness, the light of awareness, and the neutrality of equanimity to pull back the projections, pull back creation, give it back to Creator, digest it, alchemize it through the nervous system, and dissolve the appearance of, let's call it the man-made world, right? We dissolve the appearance of world that the me believes in order to discover the living reality, right? So it's about undividing the life, unbinding the life, and to recognize that every time that we have a glimpse, a taste, a sense of something that is divided or limited, it's not because we're doing something wrong. That is exactly the mechanism that keeps us bound. But it's to realize the grace of what is appearing and use the incredible potency of the reflection to dissolve the projection, dissolve the mind's projection and the limited consciousness into the unlimited purity of the landscape of consciousness that is within the boundless being. And what this requires is a certain depth of absorption. It's like we have to be able to be absorbed in the presence of being in order to recognize that we have the power to dissolve and digest all of our creations, that we have the power to recognize that we are the creator of our lived experience. And we're creating out of patterns of discordance and conditioning. And the whole purpose of the human life is to recognize the glorious opportunity to resolve not the me in the play of the world at the level of effect, but to resolve the me in the timeless being, to resolve the me in the unbounded field of light, of love, of naturalness, of glorious openness. And so let us really clarify here that when we speak of love, we're not speaking of anything cheesy, right? We're not speaking of the mind's idea of love. We're speaking of a neutral equanimity, a purity, an openness. The frequency of pure, spotless love is the unconditioned reality. We're not speaking about something emotional. We're not speaking about something that you feel. We're speaking about taking love back to the source, taking it right back to the source, and the recognition that in truth, love is the neutral, the openness, the freedom, that which is unprotected. We could say innocence, immaculate, right? It's that which is untainted, that which is unguarded, unedited, unconventional, uncompromising, right? So glorious, right? And we do know this love because we are this love. And in a way, we're longing to live this love. We're longing to be this love, live this freely. So there's nothing cheesy about love, right? And it's really, really important to recognize what we're pointing to, that it's not a pleasantry. It's not an adornment. The love that you are is the potent reality of existence. It's the divinity. It's not flowery, right? It's potent. It's freedom. It's the glory. And it's the glory that every heart is longing for in whatever language it could be spoken. What will it take for us to turn to the inner landscape and open beyond the play of cause and effect and the belief in time and space, where we imagine that we're in a process, that in the future we're going to achieve something? No, we won't. The play of time is disappointing, and we will never achieve freedom in time and space, because freedom is from time and space, right? As a person in time and space, I'm working towards, no. Freedom is from the person, right? So as these words are coming, they're not giving information. They're an invitation, a potent invitation, and a transmission field, an activation field, where the intelligence of what you are in truth can be activated to recognize what you already know to be true. Recognize. Bring online the recognition, the recognizing of a deeper faculty of realization, a deeper faculty of knowing than our learned ability to rely upon the intellect and secondhand knowledge, things that we have learned, things that we've interpreted, right? That what we're being invited into is coming completely alive and on fire in our own intelligence, our own heart's knowing. Because freedom is right here. It's a direct experience of yourself, free of everything that we think binds us and all of the beliefs that are held and bound in time and space. So the glory is that as these words come, there is nothing to do, there's nothing to understand, and yet the mind will follow, and that's beautiful, and it's okay, and the mind will understand to a certain degree, and it will contextualize and conceptualize, and it will put things in place, and it will reorganize according to what is already known, and that's perfect and beautiful, and that's just a small part of what's happening here. Deeper than that, in the finer, subtler realms of consciousness, the intelligence is cognizing, and the intelligence is recognizing and remembering at a frequency level a field of knowing, a field that we could call the smriti. It's a field of divine memory. It's a field where all the intelligence and all the knowing is already here. It's already here. It doesn't need to be learned, and it doesn't need to be remembered by the mind. It's the memory is an attunement to a finer frequency where the field of intelligence, we could call it the living Veda, is completely available. And the way that we come to know it is not through the mental capacity and the mind consciousness, but through the flow of pure consciousness and the creative intelligence flowing within itself, recognizing and realizing itself and opening to this field of what is already known. So divine memory, divine remembrance is not a mental remembrance. It's an attunement to the remembrance of what has always been. So we could say it's an opening to the timeless. It's an opening to the eternal. It's an opening to what is here now, the field of presence. So the other great glorious thing, there are so many great glorious things in this divine unfolding, is that we don't need to understand anything. We don't need to take it on board. We don't need to make notes. We don't need to feel like, am I following? Am I getting this? Am I not getting this? It doesn't matter, because it's happening deeper in the unseen. This is what we mean by a field of transmission. And the field of transmission is like an activation field, an initiatory field, where the intelligence itself is recalibrating, recognizing, fine-tuning, and is also purifying and refining itself. It's recognizing the discordance and the dance of patterns that are learned, conditioned, and disruptive to the fullness, let's say, of the smooth flow of the intelligence of the field. The patterns that are keeping a sense of limitation in place. That as we open and we join in this field and the intelligence starts to attune and come online, in the unseen, there is shifting and recalibrating happening, and it's not of time, so it's immediate. Boom, boom, boom. Right? And this is why the great glory is that we can realize the truth of our being right here now and open to the glory of the infinite field of light and love, of naturalness, of glory. We can open to that right now, instantaneously, spontaneously, come into the recognition, the realization. And according to the subtlety and the refinement of perception, will invite how deep we open and how anchored we can be in that. But we don't need to worry or be concerned or measure or effort or try to hang on or try to understand. We just receive the grace, and we open to recognize that we can spontaneously just notice, oh, yeah, right. This is known. And it can be that it's always known, and yet it deepens. It can be that there's something that feels murky and a little entangled on the surface. And then as we are in the joining in this field, that suddenly there's a noticing that the field feels more clear and open, gentler, softer. Because we're so habituated to live in our projected world and to keep projecting and believing that that world of our mind's projection is reality, that we get so invested in the story, so invested in all of the happenings, so invested in, essentially, we're bound in a deeply held belief that there's something wrong with me. So we're deeply invested in this world of trying to prove that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm successful. People like me. I do good things. I'm a good person. I try hard. I work hard. All of this that I'm created makes me good, right? Whereas what we're inviting is that we realize goodness here now as the true essential nature of life. And so that we're not moving in this worldly dance of projection and projection and projection, trying to prove ourselves, that we start to realize that the grace of life is to actually rest absorbed in the presence of being and be the aware being that keeps pulling back the projections. that starts to dissolve the projected world of limitation and lack, scarcity, deficiency, something wrong with me, something wrong with my life. We start pulling it all back by using the grace of life to illuminate where we are, where we recognize obviously division and limitation and lack and challenge and triggers and charges in the nervous system, emotionality. All of these things are graced pointers that are such an incredibly potent invitation for us to dissolve the projected reality that isn't really the reality, the projected world, to pull it back in a way, pull in the distortions and the discordances of consciousness into our inner landscape and dissolve them in the pure consciousness as we rest absorbed in the presence of being and the knowing of the heart. We have this incredible capacity, a power to see as the light of awareness and to bring that light to illuminate the projections and the discordance. And in that illumination, the technology of love is to include, to not oppose and react, but to embrace and include. And all of this happens in our inner functioning through the nervous system, like an alchemizing that feels and senses as an energy signature, as like a somatic field sensing, we could say, that has the ever deepening ability to subtly perceive the discordance and meet it, include it, embrace it. And as the frequency of love, even to bless, like be the outstretched hand, be the blessing hand, be the outstretched hand that is inviting these discordant places to be as they are, to not need to fix and change, but to be blessed by love, held in love, enveloped in an embrace which doesn't say you need to change, you need to be different. It doesn't impose an agenda, it just totally includes. And then this discordance can be seen by itself in the light. I see myself as I am as light. I see myself as the I am presence. I see myself not as a story of discordance, of upset, of emotionality, of lack, of fear. I see myself as I am, as the I am presence in the light, as the light. And then this magical alchemy happens in the seeing of the one substance, that the dissolving of the projections happens, and we start to realize what is the true reality. And that it's not the interpreted projection of the mind, and it's not the ways of interpretation and evaluation. So the whole play of life is such an incredibly potent invitation. It's a field of invitation. It's a living invitation. And you know, it does not matter where you are in this unfolding, how you move in this unfolding, because in reality you are love, and there's only love. but it's all about the integrity of the lived experience within your own heart, let's say, right? So in a way, the sharing here is never about you need to do this, you need to do that. This is the way, this is what you've got to do if you want to be free. It's not, it's got no investment, no investment at all in the way that any being moves, because love loves. Love loves you. Love loves itself. Love loves love. There's no agenda. There's no imposition. Every being has free will. Every being has free will. And yet, if the longing of the heart is to live this, the invitation then of the field is to join together in this compelling unfolding that questions everything, and that we join together in this questioning. We join together in this adventure, in this exploration. We open to the direct experience and we bring forward and share the direct experience of what is happening, what we're noticing, what is compelling me to live this truth, right? We share it so that we can join in the frequency in a kind of celebration and a frequency field that is passionate in an enlivening way, and that it's about being real, and it's about being true and honest, and that the truth and the honesty is within. That the sharing that comes forward here is that, let's say that this form, this instrument, is somehow used to read the field and express the field. To read the field and express the field with the purpose of reflecting back what is in your heart, speaking your heart back to you, to reveal both the longing and the fire of the heart that is already in the knowing of this reality, to bring alive and online a deeper recognizing of that frequency of the heart's knowing that says, yes, 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 even says, yes, I know that, yes, yes, right, that just feels really enlivened and wants to join. And also to enliven in the field discordant frequencies and bring about purification and refinement of places that can feel a little triggered and a little charged and a little revealed and a little stirred. But not because there's any fingers pointing anywhere, but because the field is this field of activation. It's a field that's so alive. And let's say that there's a knowing in this field, that the joining here, that every being that is joining and pulled to be here is called by the glory of God. We're called here by the light. We're called here by the same longing, the same frequency, the same knowing. We're called to gather here. It's choiceless, right? It may look like, oh, shall I go to satsang today? Yeah, man, I think I'm going to go. I don't know. It may look like there's a process. Does it work? Can I get home in time? It may look like all that's going on, but it's a done deal, right? The glory of God is calling us as a field of light to up level, upgrade, and to show up in the purest and most honest way we can, with the longing of our heart hanging out, revealed, and our willingness to be here and to say yes, not to anything outside, but to say yes to the fullness of the longing, and to really open to the exploration of, what is this about for me? Am I truly 100% in? What are the ways that I get pulled out? And not to make any of it right or wrong, but to let there be like a living adventure of exploration, and to live, let's say, in a way that is deeply inspired to go deeper. That right now in the unfolding, it might not be, there might not be a sense of, I'm taking this all the way, I'm taking this all the way, right? There may be like, yeah, this is really pulling me, this is really compelling. I'm really, really called, and I'm kind of fearful, and I'm kind of like, I kind of like these things in my life, and I don't really know what's going to happen if I say yes all the way to the glory. And it's all okay, because this is your adventure. What I'm sharing here now is that my adventure is pretty well tuned into, and has been for the longest time. Take me all the way, and take me there now, right? I'm 100% in. I could say, everything is yours, nothing is mine. Everything is yours, nothing is mine. This heart of light is yours, great glory. There's nothing else, nothing else, nothing else, nothing else that is wanted but the absolute fullness of this glory. I wouldn't even say there's a dilution of, and to be an instrument of your grace, and to be, no, none of that. Just the absolute sincerity of pure devotion that says, show me, take me, right? And that is why this expression happens. It's born out of the absolute compulsion to keep diving in and in and in. And so the sharing isn't about giving something to someone else. It's born out of that one-pointedness, right? And so it's in that, it's not about giving a teaching. It's not about outcomes. It's not about how regularly do you show up in satsang. Have you been resting in the being? It's not about anyone being accountable to anyone else, because it doesn't matter. It's about, let's say, we could say, modeling an accountability to our own heart, like a living surrender into that truth again and again and again, in a way that is ever fresh, right? A way that is fresh, a way that is a constant adventure and exploration, in a way that constantly evolves and refines and deepens, and doesn't rest anywhere. It doesn't achieve, it doesn't land. It's a living flow. And so the invitation of the field is for the exploration and the adventure of your heart to be whatever is meaningful for you, and to let our joining be a support and let our joining be a field of enlivening and activation, a field where you see yourself more clearly and you recognize what is important to you. And when you recognize what's important to you, that you say yes to yourself, that you honor yourself, and you open to the ever-deepening willingness within yourself to meet yourself in kindness, in love, and that there's this invitation to shine the light upon all of the ways that it's so habitual to make yourself wrong, to be living in a kind of unconscious guilt and shame that is constantly self-criticizing, self-judging, and self-punishing. And that it's only when we get to the point where we're willing to meet those places and to somehow include and love those places, include those places as the love in the light, that we start to realize that we have the power within our lived experience to shift from the frequency of fear and limitation in our lived experience, and collaborating therefore with that and perpetuating it within the collective, that we have the power to shift our lived frequency to the love and openness, and not investing in collaboration in fear and projection, but to live this reality in a way that is inspired and is about meeting life where it is, as it is, and receiving and not pushing anything away, but including and welcoming everything. And being like a alchemical distillery in our nervous system, in our consciousness, that distills down the denser frequencies and starts to recognize the intelligence of, as we distill the frequencies, as we alchemize the frequencies of fear and discordance and corruption, we distill the frequencies through our belief systems, through our conceptual contextualizations, through our ideas and concepts, to realize that the substance of all is one, is light, is bliss, and that we distill everything out of the denser frequencies to the finer frequencies, and we are nourished in the finer frequencies, and we nourish the purity of our devotion and the purity of our surrender, not as a personal devotion or personal surrender, but as a flow of divine devotion and divine surrender, which is the flow of life living itself. It's the flow of our longing, and it's also the flow of integral wholeness within itself that keeps itself integral in the knowing of itself, surrendering into itself and absolutely wholeheartedly devoted to itself. And multidimensionally, it's one integral flow that dances in different frequencies so that we can enter the current, we can enter the flow wherever we are. Whether it's a pull of the heart, a sense of the longing, whether it's that we know ourselves as consciousness, as a unified field collapsing into itself, it's the same flow. I know myself as life, living itself. Wherever we enter the flow, it's the same current that is carrying itself, that essentially is the flow of integral wholeness that has never divided. And so essentially, whatever that flow looks like, and we could say if we enter it in our longing, the longing of the heart feels like it's a longing for love, for God, for the beloved, for truth, for freedom. But ultimately, this is where we realize that it's already fulfilled. The longing is already fulfilled. And so the longing that we feel, like, let's say, like a longing for God, the longing that we feel for God is God's longing for us. The love that we feel for God is God's love for us. It's already fulfilled. It's already integrally whole. So however we feel that pull, that longing, and even if we feel it to be a division, if we follow that longing, we'll open to the field as a frequency field of that which is already integrally whole. And we discover within our own hearts longing that if we enter the longing wholeheartedly, if we enter the longing and say, great glory, I long only for you, we find out, great glory, you're here. We're never apart. The fullness of this longing is fulfilled in this moment, in the frequency of love, of openness, of peace, of knowing, of the being. The longing is fulfilled. So there's something so potent about following whatever calls us and not feeling like following the call is ever going to be in vain, because what's calling us is also responding to us. Sometimes we say you take one step towards God and God runs towards you, right? You take one step towards love and love embraces you, right? Truly, this is how it is in the field of reality. We're used to a measure for measure, a comparison, a competitive way of living within the mind projection of, if I were to take a risk of taking a step towards love, I'd probably be rejected. I'd probably be abandoned. It would probably be in vain. It would probably just result in something disappointing, right? So whatever our deeply held belief is around that and our frequency of fear, we project that upon perfect love. We project that upon God. So we imagine, because that's like our core belief structure, that's the fear frequency, the lack frequency that we're living at. And we project that upon God. That the way that I experienced lack and division and separation in my young life, that is how God is, that's how my relationship with God is, right? I'm not going to be met with open arms. I'm going to lose. And so when we're living in that belief, it's what we create. Of course, we're never being rejected by God, by love, but we're creating a play that if we believe that we'll be rejected and we'll be disappointed, then we will be rejected and disappointed. Now, it's not about believing that we'll be received and believing that we're going to get a good outcome, because that would be actually at the level of fear. It's about opening to the frequency of the presence of being that knows there is no lack. There's just this here now. And at this frequency, we know that we can't be rejected, that we can't be disappointed, we can't be abandoned. There's nothing wrong with us because we're met in a frequency of primordial or essential goodness that just is, that doesn't change. And so that's why resting in the absorption of being, where we can directly experience the changeless, unchanging reality, we come to trust a frequency that doesn't ever, ever waver. And we realize that the unwavering frequency of silent, still presence of being is the glory of God, is love itself, right? And that we don't have to work for that we already are it, and we have absolute access to this. But it's about being compelled enough to come to a focus and a depthful absorption where we can be taken and where we can recognize the finer frequency and in a way nourish our rooting and our knowing of this frequency. And then here we have the capacity to be the light that is absorbed enough in the knowing of itself that can then meet all of life at a frequency of love that truly includes and blesses, knows that life is a field of grace, and that we can really start then transmuting our lived experience. We can really start meeting and embracing and stopping the habit to divide and limit and expect negative outcomes, expect disappointment. So within all that we're speaking of here, there's a knowing of the heart that already recognizes the intelligence of this truth, that doesn't need to understand it or follow it with the mind, but a deeper intelligence that knows. And as we are joined here, the frequency field is such that the activations and refinements and purifications are happening in the field right now. And so then in this moment, just to be here and just notice the felt sense of being, the stillness, the silence, just to drop deeper into your already active knowing of the presence, the wide open field. And just to feel the wide open field as a field that is enlivened and is a flow of intelligence and light. And where we access this flow is where there is a sense of knowing. And where there is a sense of knowing is in the sense field of being, the presence of being that just is, unmoving, unchanging, ever still, omnipresent, just here, now. I am, and I know myself as I am, just here, right now. A field of openness, a field of light, a field of peace and simplicity, a field of silent being. And where the being knows itself, where the heart knows itself, there's a dynamic flow of knowing that we enter, perhaps first of all as a stillness and a silence. But deep in the still, silent field, where the knowing is, there's a dynamic flow of the knowing, knowing itself and confirming itself deep within the field of being. Nothing to do with the mind or any kind of external permission, a deep knowing and confirmation in the heart of being this presence, here now, the simple presence of being, just wide open as a field of infinite freedom, free of time and space. The timeless being is, and you know yourself as the timeless being, the I am presence that just is, here now. And there's nothing to do or understand. There's nowhere to take this. There's nothing to do with it. It's just about confirming in the innermost sense of being that the knowing is here. And where the knowing is the flow of life, the flow of grace, the flow of light and intelligence that is intelligently moving as a field of pure consciousness to include itself in every single configuration that it can find here in the field. It is including itself in its discordant patternings and conditionings and all of the ways that it holds itself in fear. There's a sweeping flow of light that is flowing to clear the patterns of discordance, and it's instantaneous, boom. And according to the readiness within the depth of knowing that says, within the intelligence, I know that shifting can happen immediately, that healing is not a process in time, that shifting can happen immediately, here now. Has to be awake in the intelligence. So we're speaking of this because where it's not awake, it's pointing to this possibility of awakening the intelligence that knows the quantum mechanical functioning of the field of intelligence as a more refined truth and reality than the mental belief in time and space and process, right? That we let go of time and space and process into the unbounded knowing of the intelligence, that there's already a configuration of a divine pattern here, and it's just about attuning with it and saying yes to it, saying yes to reality, saying yes to wholeness. I am not a problem to be fixed. I am whole here now. And when the frequency of I am whole here now is the frequency of love and openness, the shifting can happen so immediately. Whereas if the fear frequency is saying, yeah, I'm whole here now, and the deep frequency says, and yeah, sure, right, of course, that's not actually true, then of course it's not going to. Of course the shifting isn't going to happen. So in a way, these words are coming just to point to how this field of intelligence operates. Wherever we are holding a focus, whatever we are believing in, whatever we are perpetuating as a frequency of where we're in allegiance, this is what we are creating out of. So this is how we can illustrate that if we're operating out of these old frequencies and patterns of discordance, we're going to keep repeating the same storylines with different configurations until we see through that we are creating from a frequency of discordance. And we see that and we illuminate it, and boom, we recognize that the seeing intelligence of the light shifts it immediately to the frequency of openness, of love, of naturalness, of open receptivity, and the infinite field of possibilities, and a creative flow that is divinely inspired, unlimited. Anything is possible. We're only confined and limited by where we are drawing upon. If we're drawing upon the mind's limited learning and a seeming contextual archive of information, then we'll continue to perpetuate limitation. If we're drawing upon an infinite field, this field of memory, of smriti that we're speaking of, through the means of shruti, that we're opening to receive the intelligence and divine guidance, and we're in not really a trust, but we're in a frequency alignment that acts as a complete trust in the one, in the divine. Then we're operating and creating out of the frequency of the unbounded abundance and flow of life, where there is no lack and scarcity, where there's enough, more than enough, where the wellspring is infinite. And it's about widening our heart field to include everything, instead of limiting our heart field due to the frequency of fear and the expectation of lack and the expectation of disappointment, the expectation of things going wrong, the expectation of being left, the expectation of it being hard, the expectation of it being a tough climb to realize this truth, right? That we can shift that, all of that, to realize that we're not making a tough journey to discover the spiritual reality and freedom. We're opening to a spontaneous, glorious seeing of the love that we are. And it's joyful and delightful and beautiful and glorious. And love is here, and love is loving. And it's right here. And it isn't hard. And it isn't like a challenging climb on rocky terrain, right? It's just here. And it's about shifting the frequency to the frequency that can open to receive the possibility that it's impossible to be divided from God and the glory, that there never has been a division. And so the frequency shift is like a reattuning, a recognizing out of the functioning of the operating system of limitation to the operating system of the infinite unbounded field of inspired divine reality, right? And so then here we are. We're here. This is the reality. And now we have the capacity to notice in the lived experience where we are connecting in with a projection. And now we have the capacity absorbed here in true reality to recognize a limitation of fear when it arises and absorb it into the pure consciousness. That we absorb our thoughts of limitation and lack and the mind consciousness that is limited. We absorb it all into the infinite field of the lived reality that is the knowing of the heart. This is the reality of what a human life is for. And so, let's spiral back to the beginning. What is it that compels us to live this truth and be focused and absorbed in this truth and to really see what's going on? And why do we get pulled into that hamster wheel of the projected world? Can we open as an exploration to see, why is that somehow compelling? With the wisdom light on, that what compels that is somehow like an addictive familiarity with a false sense of safety in what the mind knows as a limited context, right? That it's so compelling to stay within the comfort of what the mind knows, even when the life isn't very comfortable and is disappointing and even plays with suffering. It's so compelling to keep being pulled into the frequency of fear, because we learn so young that that frequency of fear within the needs met structure and the tribal consciousness of our family, we learned that somehow that fear frequency was love, right? This is really important. And we have this unconscious loyalty to the belief that to stay in a bond of love, to stay bonded with the fear frequency, is somehow a bond that keeps us connected to the tribal consciousness of our family. And that misunderstanding and deeply held belief in separation. And even though we're opening to the glory and the love, that there are these unconscious ways that we keep defaulting back. But as we realize, wow, okay, if that is possible and that is happening, then great glory, show me. Show me how I'm defaulting to an unconscious commitment or loyalty to fear because of some kind of blind belief that that is love and that I'm bonded in love from the very, very beginnings of this human life. Let me open and be the light that illuminates and sees and recognizes the discordance, so that I can see through the blocks and the holdings and the unconscious commitments in all of their various flavors and frequencies, that I can be the light, absorbed in the light, in the naturalness of the unconditional field of love, that can see and include everything, and that there's this willingness, a willingness to see, a willingness to open deeper than I've ever opened before, to meet myself more deeply, and to illuminate more clearly, and to include more fully than I have ever had the capacity for before. And so right now, what is happening in the field is that the intelligence is recalibrating and bringing online a greater capacity to illuminate, to see, to be willing, courageous, kind, and soft enough with ourselves, that we're not defaulting to the self-critical, self-punishing, self-judging mechanism to constantly be in the frequency of there's something wrong with me and I'm doing this wrong and why did I do it again and I keep messing up, and to be so open to receive myself in all of the frequencies of where I make myself wrong, so that I can transmute the subtleties of my commitments to fear and be the love that includes. So as we are speaking the intelligence of the field is that it's all happening in the field right now to the capacity that we're open to, and that the consciousness can move freely in more flowing and refined patterns. And so there's nothing to do, there's nothing to understand. It's about just receiving. Receiving yourself more deeply, receiving the divine and the frequency of love more deeply, receiving the felt sense of being loved and held and blessed more deeply, receiving more light and illumination and a clearer seeing right now in the wide open field of infinite possibility. Receiving all that is here to be received without even knowing, and that open receptivity is in the resting here now as this one field of silent presence. There's an open receptivity that is natural. Mm. So the reality of here now is always here. And it's just our ability to rest and see what is here, instead of being compelled to try to think our way out of it, and to really just start to see how we're constantly projecting and creating a projected world, and how we have this capacity to dissolve those projections within our innermost landscape of consciousness, that we bring our mental mind consciousness field into the field of pure consciousness. In a way, thought by thought, we illuminate. Feeling by feeling, we include, right? There's such a gentleness and a naturalness to this grace. We see the thoughts that want to divide, that want to say that it's hard, and we open to the possibility in this frequency field of incredible support and guidance, and a joyous flow of deepening and seeing and illuminating and loving. It's all happening right now, and it's just about being open to it, to feel the pull of the heart, and to say yes, and to let the pull of the heart, and then to live this life fully engaged, fully dancing, fully feeling and experiencing, but seeing from the perspective of love, instead of seeing and creating from the frequency of fear. It changes the whole lived experience. And so just opening to the possibility of this deepening. And then it's up to you. It's totally up to you. We join in the field, And we bring the frequency of our lived experience to the field, and we share that frequency. Wherever we are, we're like transmitting that frequency. We're sharing it. And as we join here, we share that, and we open to being then a frequency field of light, of love. We start to shift the lived reality together as being a frequency field of love, where we are nourished and held and supported, that we feel the grace of being in this together and the beauty of that.